Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTB World. Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah once said, and I quote, "You are free. You are free to go to your temples, you are free to go to your mosques or to any other place of worship." This vision of religious freedom, this vision of inclusivity, this vision of equality is something upon which we'll be shedding light during the course of today's conversation. Overall, we'll be talking about minority rights and how we do see them being upheld in the Pakistani society. Today on our show, we'll be talking about not one, rather quite a few fundamental rights which the Pakistani constitution gives to minorities in this regard. And we'll also be delving upon not one, rather quite a few monumental judicial decisions which have actually empowered minorities at a very basic level. In this regard, we'll also be shedding light upon, of course, not one, rather quite a few notable initiatives taken by the Pakistani government, be it in terms of, introduction of an education quota for them, or be it in terms of perhaps enhancing job opportunities for them. In this regard, we'll also be talking about the responsibility which then lies on Pakistan's education system so as to inculcate, values of inclusion, values of tolerance, and definitely values of respect when it comes to treating minorities per se too. All of this today, that too with an extremely diverse panel. Let me introduce you to today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Ms. Fatima Batul, who is an educationist and she's also a legal expert. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Alongside her, I have Fahad Kazmi Saab, who is a research scholar and an analyst. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show. Via telephone line, we'll be joined by Ms. Michelle Chaudhary, who is a minority rights worker and she's also a human rights defender. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show. And we'll also be joined via telephone line by Justice Retired Nasra Iqbal Sahiba, who has been a former judge of the Lahore High Court. Assalamu alaikum, madam, and welcome to the show. Now, before we start the discussion on today's topic, let's have a look at this brief report.
Minorities play a crucial role in Pakistani's national development. Their contributions span across various sectors, from education and healthcare to business and the arts. These communities enrich our culture, diversity, and strengthen the fabric of our society. The government has recognized the importance of supporting and empowering minorities. Initiatives such as reserved seats in parliament, minority scholarships, and special job quotas ensure their representation and advancement. These measures reflect a commitment to fostering an inclusive environment where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Moreover, Pakistani laws are designed to provide equal protection to all citizens, including minorities. The Constitution guarantees their rights and ensures that they are safeguarded against discrimination. However, the journey towards greater inclusion requires continuous efforts. As a society, we can work towards this by promoting tolerance, understanding, and unity. By embracing our differences, we can build a stronger, more inclusive Pakistan where every community can contribute to our collective progress.
Welcome back. Now to get the conversation started with you, Ms. Michelle. Now when we do talk about Jinnah's vision for minorities, we all understand the fact that, he did stress upon inclusivity, he did stress upon religious freedom and of course, rule of law for minorities at large. But when we do talk about, living up to this vision or for that matter, living up to its ideals, practically to what extent do you feel have we been able to do the same? Or how would you analyze the state of minorities to be in the Pakistani society and what are those steps, be it social, be it economical, be it for that matter even political, that we do need to take so as to further empower and protect minorities at large?
The Qaid-e-Azam certainly said that you are free to go to your temples and you are free to go to your places of worship in the state of Pakistan. Unfortunately, over the years, the non-Muslims in Pakistan have and continue to face numerous challenges. For example, there is fear, there is uncertainty, and so many other issues that non-Muslims face. Some of the suggestions that I would give would be that, discriminatory laws certainly need to be revisited in order to promote social, political and religious inclusion. There should be inclusive initiatives taken by the state and the community at large. And another aspect would be hate material in the curriculum. Curriculum reforms is another very important aspect. And the state must also ensure that people have to be held accountable for what they do. If for any of their wrongdoings, nobody should be allowed to go free after committing any kind of violence or any kind of a criminal offense. So accountability is a must.
Madam, although in this regard it would then be pertinent to also mention this fact that, recently we have seen a changed textbook policy. There has been adoption of a no-hate policy in all textbooks by the Punjab Curriculum Textbook Board, and also there has been a stress on terminology so as to generally make it more inclusive of minorities too. On which, sir, I'll come to you and I would want you to comment on this further. So, when we do talk about the Pakistan resolution, we do understand the fact that this was that one resolution which emphasized on not only the identity, the culture, and of course the importance of minorities in the Pakistani state. But overall, when it comes to analyzing our societal attitudes, how inclusive, how tolerant do you find Pakistanis generally to be when it comes to treating minorities?
Thanks a lot. Very important conversation. And as you were rightly pointing out, 11th of August 1947, the landmark speech by Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, I think that really was the basis of Pakistan. And it also reflected the spiritual, religious sentiments of Muslims also, because he was in line with what Prophet ﷺ stood for. When he was saying, you are free to go to your temples, you are free to go to your mosques. A time will come when a Muslim will cease to be Muslim, a Hindu will cease to be Hindu, a Christian will cease to be Christian, not in the religious sense, but in a political sense.
Right.
So what Qaid-e-Azam was promulgating, that all communities in Pakistan, within Pakistan, no matter what their religious affiliation personally might be, they are free to express that. And vis-a-vis constitution, every member of Pakistani Commonwealth, Pakistani community is going to be equal before law.
Right.
That's the basis of our constitution.
Right.
That's the basis of the kind of country that he was founding,
And definitely that is one thing that we as a society must aspire to live up to.
Unfortunately, we as Pakistanis, we have lagged behind. And we did not follow what Qaid-e-Azam was saying, what Iqbal was saying. And they were talking about a Pakistan which would reflect coexistence, compassionate coexistence of every single community.
Right. And not only that, sir, also their progression, their very important contributions in the society at large, a society where generally minorities would just not survive, rather they would thrive, on which, madam, I would want you to add to further. So when we do talk about this, taking on from where Fahad Saab left, I think generally we must also construe this in the context of our legal framework, of our constitution, because we are all very clear on this very simple fact that when it comes to constitutional protections and fundamental rights, there is no distinction between Muslims or the religious minority, so to speak. Why then, as a lawyer, do you still feel there is that gap in implementation?
We have constitutional regime very well addressing the constitutional rights of every citizen of Pakistan, including minorities, such as Article 20, Article 21, Article 22,
Article
and
25.
then Article 25 is the equality of citizens of Pakistan.
Even 25A would equally apply.
Yeah, and then we have Article 36, 37 and 38. This is principles of policy.
Right.
These
and
are the guiding principles.
It would also be very relevant here to mention, madam, that when it comes to their own specific issues, we do also have, specific laws catering to the same. But when we do talk about the judicial decisions, because that is also something that I would want you to talk about, we have seen landmark judgments like that of Tasadduq Hussain Jilani Saab in 2014, and then others, of course, the Raj Temple case, which is also a very monumental decision in itself. How do you see Pakistan's judiciary actually upholding fundamental rights of minorities?
Judiciary has a pivotal role to play, since it is the guardian of the Constitution of Pakistan. So it has to implement the constitutional rights and look after the legal rights of every citizen of Pakistan. So this is very important to understand why we are having certain gaps. So we have a very historic ruling, that is Tasadduq Hussain Jilani's ruling of Supreme Court 2014, which are known as Jilani directives for the specific lifting of the rights of the minority.
That's very right, and it's very important then to also, of course, mention this judgment, particularly because it deals with the issues of forced conversions and protection of places of worship of minorities, both of which are very rampant issues when it comes to, minorities in the Pakistani society. But moving on, when we do talk about perhaps aspiring to better align our national legal framework with that of international human rights standards, how would you comment on that? Because you see, then again, this is an obligation which the Pakistani state has to fulfill.
That's true. post Jalani Directive, that is the Supreme Court judgment to 2014, we have seen certain improvements. For instance, the district judges have been specifically given directions to sensitively and vigilantly enforce all the legal rights and special protections given under the Pakistani law. We have certain inclusions in Pakistan Penal Code for that particular issues. So we have seen certain developments in the police agencies too, which is known as the MESAC centers. The creation of MESAC center is a next step, but it is not the
ultimate step.
Ultimate step.
Slowly and steadily we are getting
there. We need to include many more minority representations within the mainstreams. Mainstreams of the positions at every tier of the government and non-governmental organizations and agencies.
Representation and participation both equally,
Both
madam?
Equally, yeah.
On which, Justice Nasra, I'll come to you and I would want you to add to this further. So overall, when we do talk about the peculiar challenges that minorities, more particularly minorities, children do face in the Pakistani society, how would you detail those to be? Because a lot of times we do see they are unjustly subjected to discrimination, that too in their classrooms. How do you then propose can we work towards having perhaps more inclusive environments in educational institutions? And in this regard, then it's also very pertinent to mention this recent law which has come into being after the President Asif Ali Zardari Sahab recently signed the Christian Marriage Amendment Act 2024, the purpose of which is to, of course, raise the marriageable age for minority Christian community to 18 years. How would you view this law and how do you feel are steps like these important in the social uplifting of minorities?
Jinnah had said in his speech on 11th August that Pakistan was made for dignity of human beings, and you are free to go to your temples, to your churches, to your mosques or whatever places of worship. There is no restriction from the state. You are all independent citizens of Pakistan. I think children are the most cruel. When there are children in school who are not belonging to the majority, that is to say Muslim, then they don't like to sit next to them, they don't like to play with them, which is not the way that Quaid-e-Azam had wanted. So first of all, we have to get the teachers to be trained to see that the children don't exercise discrimination against children of other faiths. The minority people don't get the same kind of jobs or the treatment that the majority gets, and they are discriminated against. First of all, we have to remove this kind of discrimination, and then children of minorities are abducted and they are forced into conversions and marriages, which is not allowed, because which is what Quaid-e-Azam said, everyone's free to be in Muslim state and they have equal rights as everybody else. So we have to ensure that that happens, and for that we have to have some added legislation. We should definitely have it. We should make the laws as much affirmative action as possible, because that's what we really need. And President Zardari just changing or bringing into law that the age of marriage for the women of other minorities is the same is not going to help until it is specifically enforced, and also in jobs. It was on the quota system. There should never be a quota. All laws or employments should be on competitive basis.
Right, madam. But coming towards you, Ms. Michelle, I would want you to talk about the peculiar challenges which minority women do face in the Pakistani society today, because reports suggest, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when it comes to minority women, they do face a double discrimination, one which then emanates from their gender particularly, and the second one which of course emanates from religion too. So in this regard, what kind of gender specific measures in your opinion we do need to take so as to overcome these issues and to ensure a minority women's participation in Pakistan's national development?
I would just say that in recognition of the constitutional policies contained in Chapter 1, Fundamental Rights, and Chapter 2, Principles of Policy of the Constitution of Pakistan 1973, all citizens are entitled to equal protection of law, including equal education, equal educational and professional opportunities. The government is obligated to protect, empower and develop marginalized communities, including women, religious minorities and persons with disability through various measures. And I also would suggest that special consideration must be given to non-Muslim women, as they do face double discrimination because of their gender and their religion. So this needs to certainly be addressed. It hampers the progress of a community when women are not given an opportunity to develop.
On which I'll come to you, Fahad Saab, and I would want you to comment on this, but more so from an Islamic perspective. So overall, when we do talk about, the importance and of course the stress which then Islam places on the rights of minorities, how would you explain that to be? Because if we look back into the Islamic history, we also see very monumental documents like the Charter of Medina, which very categorically actually established rights and duties of both Muslims as well as non-Muslims. So how would you comment on this, and how do you feel should we then draw inspiration from these Islamic principles so as to uplift minorities in the society today?
This is a very critical question. And if we are to change the current state of affairs, we can, come up with laws and policies, so on and so forth. But religion is that source of inspiration that actually can bring meaningful change. And for Muslims, it is very important that we reiterate the teachings of Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In Treaty of Medina, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam signed a treaty with Jews of Medina.
Right.
It was the Jewish community which was present at that point in time. And Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam clearly mentioned that there are two communities, Muslim community and the Jewish community, enjoying absolute personal freedom in their own affairs.
Right.
It is part of that document, and it had 63 articles, by the way. So Treaty of Medina being one, where Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam established the equality of a non-Muslim minority community which was there in Medina. Another very important significant event, Christians of Najran, they came to Medina. They met Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a dialogue with that Christian delegation. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed them to worship, and I am quoting Islamic authentic established history. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed them to worship in Medina. In Medina. So those Christians, they were allowed in the life of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were expressing their spiritual sentiments.
Sir, in this regard, we should also then, of course, put this responsibility on community leaders, on religious leaders, so as to spread this message and, of course, the treatment that Islam does mandate on us when it comes to treating minorities.
Absolutely.
Madam, I'll come to you, and I would want you to comment on this particular issue which, a lot of minorities complain they come across, more particularly Christians who do try to rent properties in Muslim neighborhoods. They might not be allowed to do so. How do you propose can we then change our urban planning or generally developmental projects so as to make them more inclusive of minorities per se? Because we have seen that in countries like Canada and then of course Australia, they are very anti-discrimination policies in this regard too.
Yeah, that's very interesting and crucial question, and we must have some differences now because this is high time now. So what are the propositions and what may be the perspectives? So first of all, the government should with conviction change the policy for the urban development, and that is the inclusiveness of all urban and rural habitation. For instance, we have Johannabad, we have certain colonies specifically in the name of the religious minorities, but this is not the solution. Unless and until we have anti-zonal policies, we must include all neighborhood with harmony, interfaith communities. Otherwise, we can't even think of any harmonious and tolerant society within Pakistan under the umbrella of the Constitution of Pakistan as well as the Sharia.
So when we do talk about having more inclusive zoning laws, how particularly do you feel can we aspire to do just that?
See, this is the need of the time that we must have anti-zonal laws. We have certain incidents, unfortunate incidents such as Jadawala incident, and then we have certain colonies in Faisalabad and many areas which have been victim of the violent attacks just because they are highlighted and they are segregated. So these are the repercussions of segregating the minority communities from within the thread of societal fabric of Pakistan community.
Right.
This is the ultimate solution, that we must have certain legislations which are directly and clearly stating every citizen of Pakistan and treating equally with regard to urban and rural
So definitely this is something which should be given equal consideration when it comes to their housing too. On which I'll come to you, Justice Nasra, and I would want you to add to this, but more so from the viewpoint of being an educationist. So overall, when we do talk about inculcating those values of tolerance and of course inclusivity, what are the changes you feel that we do need to make in our education system per se, be it with regards to curricular reform, be it with regards to, for that matter, perhaps better teacher training, because that in itself is very important so as to induce that culture of cultural responsiveness.
The thing is that the teachers need training first of all. They are not inclusive to everybody like they should be. For that reason, they should be trained first before they make teachers. I have a school in the name of my mother, and I used to get these teachers trained first so that they are at least aware that everybody is at the same level. That's very important. If the teachers are properly trained, they teach the children the same thing, and then there's no discrimination. And if there's no discrimination in the mind of the child, then there should be an equal opportunity. And which means the freedom of expression, not the absence of restraint. Everybody is free to ask questions, and the teacher must know how to answer. It's very important. First of all, teachers have to be trained in school. That they have to see to it that the students who don't belong to the majority group are equally treated, because freedom is the presence of opportunity, not the absence of restraint. And we have to ensure this, the presence of opportunity or affirmative action exists for everybody. It has to flow from the teacher. Students have to learn it, and they have to see to it that they don't marginalize students who don't belong to the majority community. That was what Pakistan was made for. And we have to ensure that dignity of human beings is guaranteed in Pakistan. That's for what it was created. It was not only just for the Muslim minorities, it was for everybody who wanted to stay here. We have a whole province.
Right, madam, your point is noted. I'll come to you, Ms. Michelle, and I would want you to talk about, rather debunk the most common misconceptions and myths which do exist in the Pakistani society when it comes to minorities. What are the most common myths that you as a minority rights worker do come across, and how would you debunk the same? And why is it so important then to also talk about the contributions, rather the achievements of minorities when it comes to, you know, socially, culturally, politically, even economically contributing towards the development of the country?
There are certainly certain misconceptions in regards to religious minorities in Pakistan, and one of them is that the general public inclines to associate non-Muslims with other countries, such as Christians are usually associated with the West, Hindus and Sikhs are usually associated with one of our neighboring countries. And I think this is a grave misconception. Non-Muslims in Pakistan have pledged complete allegiance to Pakistan. Not only did we contribute decisively towards the creation of Pakistan, but have and continue to contribute towards its development. In the armed forces of Pakistan, outstanding performances and exceptional levels of professionalism have been attained by non-Muslim officers. And I am very proud to state here that I am the daughter of one such officer. My father, Group Captain Cecil Chaudhary, was a man who devoted his entire life to not only protecting the geographical boundaries in the Pakistan Air Force, but also the ideological boundaries of Pakistan through his career in education. And whether it was achieving the highest level of professionalism in the Pakistan Air Force or grooming the leaders of tomorrow by providing quality education to Pakistani children, or then standing up to protect the civil rights and dignity of simple, ordinary people, Cecil Chaudhary gave it his all and excelled. And I would also like to state here that my father is one of the few people in Pakistan who is very highly decorated. He has been awarded the country's gallantry awards, which is the Sitare Jurrat and the Sitare Basalat. And he has also been awarded the country's highest civil award, which is the President's Award for Pride of Performance, which was given to him posthumously after he passed away for his contributions in the fields of education and in the fields of human rights. But that is about Cecil Chaudhary. But there are so many others who have excelled excelled in performing their duties in the Pakistan Air Force. And not only Air Force, but even in the armed forces. The non-Muslim officers have not only excelled in efficiency, but have laid down their lives to defend the borders of this country that they loved so deeply. Wing Commander Mervyn Middlecourt, Squadron Leader Peter Christie, these are two Air Force officers who sacrificed their life while protecting the borders of this country. And similarly, there are so many officers in the Pakistan Army and in the Pakistan Navy that have also contributed towards Pakistan. And in the more recent future, in the Pakistan Armed Forces, there are officers who have excelled again in their work. We see in the Pakistan Army, there's Major General Noel Khokhar, Major General Julian James, who has just been promoted to Major General. Then there's Brigadier Helen Roberts, who was the first lady, a Christian lady, to become a brigadier. Then in the army, the first Sikh officer, Major Harcharan Singh, was the first Sikh officer in the Pakistan Army. So in the armed forces, there's been a phenomenal amount of contributions towards the defense of Pakistan. Similarly, and then of course in every field, like I said, we have contributed phenomenally in the field of education. So, and then of course we cannot forget the first federal minister for minorities in Pakistan was Mr. Shahbaz Bhatti, who was the first federal minister for minorities in Pakistan.
Right. But in addition to that, we must also, of course, appreciate and acknowledge the fact that we do have Punjab's first ever Sikh minister appointed in the Punjab cabinet, Mr. Ramesh Singh Arora, in this regard, to which definitely is a very welcome step, because we do need to, at a very basic level, improve, of course, minorities representation, that too in such important positions of power. On which I'll come to you, and before we conclude today's show, I think to wrap up today's show, we must also talk about, the most notable initiatives taken by the Pakistani government so as to include minorities in Pakistan, be it in terms of perhaps having new laws, a law that we earlier mentioned, or for that matter, be it in terms of having various initiatives, because we do now see that, over time, there has been enhancement in the job quota as well, and then a new educational quota that in itself has also been introduced. So overall, how would you view all these initiatives?
Yeah, this is very interesting question. Post 2014 judgment, we have tremendous improvements, and to start with is the 5% quota, which is not sufficient. It shall be increased, but it is a good initiative. And then we have 2% quota at the public institutions, which was not earlier granted. So this is another initiative. It is at a national curriculum council level for the federal government that all 7 minorities in Pakistan will be having the religious books instead of having any other ethics. The subject of ethics has been replaced by their own religious books. But the problem here is the provincial government should also inculcate this in provincial regimes.
Right, now that this is a provincial subject, especially after the 18th Amendment.
And then we have another initiative by the new minister, Minority Minister Arora Saab, which is very welcoming, and that is the announcement of 18,914 vacancies for the minorities. And then we see the signing of the Christian Marriage Amendment Act 2024. And lastly, but not the least, the Punjab province has become the first province in the world who has adopted Anand Karaj Act, that is the Sikh Marriage Act.
Most of the things they have happened in a first, right? But then again, you see, we do need to effectively work towards, implementation of all these initiatives.
The problem, the enforcement and the implementation at the, police agencies and the societal fabric. That is the issue. And the issue lies ultimately again with the parents' role. It's not relevant, but I think this is the baseline. While bringing their children, how we see many domestic workers having from different minorities at their houses, and they are not treated like a human being. They are segregated, no matter it's a matter of food, their plates and their glasses are segregated. It's a question, and it is a matter which we see publicly. It's a matter of
basically children's upbringing at the end. On which, Fahad Saab, I'll come to you, and before we conclude today's show, so all in all, how would you comment on the role of Pakistani media, electronic media or otherwise, when it comes to upholding and promoting minority rights in the Pakistani society? Because at one end, yes, we do understand that it has given, visibility to minority issues which might not have been there perhaps a decade ago. But at the other end, we can't also ignore the fact that it has also invited backlash too. So how do you propose, can we strike that balance where social media is used constructively to advocate for minority rights?
I think meaningful dialogue needs to take place. A lot of ground needs to be covered. There are great initiatives, and vis-a-vis electronic media and social media, there are good voices that have emerged over the years, but a lot more needs to be done. And as Madam was slightly and rightly pointing out, that there is segregation, there is this issue of our societal fiber that we have to change, that we have to revamp. And that is where the role of the majority community that we all, represent, Muslims, it comes into play. And religion is that force. If it is positively used, then it can bring positive repercussions. And that is where we need to have the ulamas, the religious scholars, step forward and tell the world, because we have to appease our own consciousness and our own God at the end of the day. It is a spiritual responsibility that I have to treat every human as equal.
Right.
That is what Sharia asks me to do.
Right.
So irrespective of my whatever theological framework that I subscribe to, I as a Muslim have this, fundamental responsibility that I owe to my own religion, that I owe to my own identity.
Right.
So if sane Muslim voices step forward and tell everyone that, look, every human is equal. That is what Prophet ﷺ was promulgating. That is what Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, Ali al-Murtaza, they were promulgating. That is what the Sufiya of subcontinent, they were promulgating. Muinuddin Chishti Ajmeri, Ali Ajmeri, Nizamuddin Auliya, Mian Mir. This large-hearted approach needs to be promulgated.
Right.
We can talk about policies, we can talk about legislation, very important. We can talk about all these initiatives. If the social fiber, if the societal fiber is not changed.
That's very rightly put by yourself, because this is a social issue and it has to derive its very solutions from the society as well, because regardless of the fact that how many laws and policies we do have in place, they won't be implemented unless we end up changing our societal attitudes. I'll come to you, Ms. Michelle, and before we conclude our today's show, my last question to you would be that over a period of time we have seen the job quota for minorities to be increased so as to be 5%, but why then at a very basic level we still do see a lot of job vacancies being vacant for minorities? What are both the systemic and the societal barriers that we do need to overcome so as to ensure that all these job vacancies, they are justly and rightly so filled?
The 5% job quota introduced by the government was very well received, and it was certainly a step in the right direction towards mainstreaming religious minorities in Pakistan. However, I feel that a 5% admission quota for students from religious minority communities needs to be imposed, which would help bridge the literacy gap and to fill the vacant positions. Another factor that would contribute towards these positions remaining vacant would be, I would think, that many times the advertisements for these jobs under the offered quota are not widely circulated, due to which potential candidates are either not aware about it, or then they learn about the position after the due date has passed. So they're unable to then apply for those positions. So this needs to be streamlined to a certain extent so that the relevant candidates may apply for these positions. The fact that in job advertisements, the positions for sanitary workers, sweepers, sweepresses, the requirement states that only Christian persons should apply. The service rule that carries this discriminating clause needs to be amended. The dignity and respect of every citizen must be upheld regardless of their religion. And also, I think it is essential that a regulatory body be established to monitor the overall implementation of the job quota. That would certainly help in allocating the jobs to the deserving.
And of course, having more and more minorities in important positions of power, and of course in public service positions, that will overall lead to perhaps a greater social cohesion in the society too. Moving on, Madam, my last question to you would be that, what would your message be so as to wrap up today's show, especially when it comes to ensuring that we do ensure that minorities, they are given their due space in the mainstream, be it politically, be it economically, or be it socially. What would your message and recommendations be in this regard?
The minority representatives more opportunities to take part in talk shows, and the other thing is they should be given awards. That's very important because it brings them into prominence, and they should be an equal opportunity employer. We have all our ads in the newspaper now saying that the state is an equal opportunity employer at the threshold level, that is so. But as the promotions happen, then the minorities are not treated equally. And it's very important. They should all be treated the same and given equal opportunity. And then the lowest job, everyone should be having the same treatment, equal employment opportunity. Freedom is the presence of opportunity, not the absence of restraint. And we have to be very careful that everyone has equal.
Right, Madam, your point is noted. On which note, I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Ms. Fatma. Thank you so much, Fahad Saab. Thank you so much, Ms. Michelle. And thank you so much, Madam, for your time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about minority rights as we do see them being upheld in the Pakistani society. In this regard, we also spoke about not one, rather quite a few pro-minority laws which the Pakistani state has promulgated. We also spoke about not one, rather quite a few landmark judicial decisions which have upheld minority rights in ways more than one. Whereas, of course, there's no denying to the fact that the Pakistani government is very diligently working so as to empower minorities per se. What we do need to actively work upon as a society is to change our societal attitudes towards them, is to be perhaps more tolerant and definitely more compassionate and kind towards them, because they say it right when they say that, the true measure of any society is then gauged by the way it then treats its most vulnerable members. Thank you for watching The Society. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.